When it comes to what to call your employee network or employee resource group, I have seen some of the craziest names. And does it matter? You might be saying, does it matter what it's called? It kind of does. And I know actually a lot of networks think about this a lot, right? So in this video, I'm going to share with you maybe one or two of the crazy names that I've seen, but I'm also going to be sharing with you tips and why it is important actually to decide on the correct name. So this is ERG Strategy, the channel that gives you tips, tools and strategies to create effective, engaged employee resource groups that really make a difference in the place that you work. So new videos every Tuesday. Since 2026, I'm on it every Tuesday and I go live every Friday morning at 8:30 UK time on LinkedIn and also here on YouTube. So if that is your jam, then you're in the right place. So how to name your ERG for maximum impact and also buy-in. Now, I tell you why it matters because I mean, a bit like branding, right? You think about the iconic brand names, and yes, some of them are like a little bit obscure, like Nike obviously was like, this Greek goddess or whatever. But brands and names matter. And when it comes to employee resource groups, especially today in 2026, with the scrutiny that is on these networks, looking at things like, who is allowed to go to those networks? What are the networks focusing on? I'm telling you, these names are important now more than ever. And this isn't just about labels. This is names that convey the meaning or the purpose of what the network is about. This is what people are looking at. People are looking at how much time are people spending on this activity. And so actually the names are really important now more than ever before. And so the names are important actually also for people that potentially want to join it, right? For people that potentially want to join the network, are they inspired by the name? Or actually, do they think, I'm not sure I want to be associated with that group? I mean, there's a whole nother piece of work around association with historically minoritized groups, and I can go down that rabbit hole in a different video, but there is a reason why the name's important. So first of all, for colleagues that are not a part of the network, and for senior leaders also kind of like looking at these networks and what they're doing, but also for potential new members, are they inspired to join based on the name? So that's one of the reasons that it's important. Some of the common mistakes that I see, sometimes the names are, so I would say, like lacking creativity, and I'm going to be really careful not to say any names of networks of individuals that know me, but sometimes they may be a little bit kind of corporate sounding or generic, and so they don't necessarily inspire people to get involved. People might just think, oh, it sounds like a bit of a box tick. Because it's kind of just like the label, insert specific, identity type, and that's it. And so, it doesn't really inspire anything. And people maybe think, oh, we've almost just done top trumps of the protected characteristics or the protected classes. And it's just based on different identity groups. And, is there actually any meaning to it? So it can sometimes be a little bit too generic. Sometimes by the language, people can feel that it's a bit exclusionary, so that it's non-inclusive. And I think especially where a lot of the political debate is at the moment, particularly around race and gender and the kind of political winds that have blown across from the US. So an example of that is where you have networks that are, for example, women at, or black at, or Latinx at. We know that good practice now is that networks should be pretty much open to everyone that is interested in the interests of that community group, right? So if the group is literally just called black at or women at, other individuals, other colleagues, allies, etc. So for example, if it's women at, men might be thinking, does that mean that men aren't welcome? So sometimes just in the way you maybe shift the language to be something like, gender parity, or, the gender network. I know that quite a few women's networks did that in 2025, rebranded to the gender network. And then some of those networks actually then created a women's chapter within that, and also a men's chapter as well. So just again, changing the language just so that it signals that people are included. I know that what some networks do is they may still have, black at such and such, but then they have and allies at the end. So, and that is a way of signaling that everybody is welcome. I mean, when we sort of think about some of the elements of a strong brand, and when you think about things like Nike and other names that are really memorable, there is something about if you can choose a name that's really memorable, that kind of rolls off the tongue and really scans well. You've really got something, and also links to the other thing I would say is links to the company or links to the company brand or culture. And I was trying, there are some really good ones that do this really well. So in some organizations, I know they almost like all have like a formula of how they all incorporate the company name also within the employee resource group name, and I love those. I think one of my very favorite names is the LGBTQ plus network at Amazon, which is called Glamazon, which I just love. Like, it's my absolute favorite. So, it's, you've got sort of the G and the L going into Amazon. There's something about just that terminology, in terms of when we get to when it comes to like queer culture, I think the terminology just works fantastically. So some of these key elements, a name which is really clear, and it also demonstrates the purpose. So some of the names that I often see are things like represent, aspire, inspire, rise, embrace. Is quite common when it comes to like race and cultural ethnicity. Reach is really common when it comes to race, ethnicity and cultural heritage. But those names there, embrace and reach, you can see how they also kind of like convey a meaning of like what the network is about. Represent, I've talked about. Pride obviously is the terminology is quite well understood. So so having a name that kind of conveys what the network is about is really useful. We talked about it combining with the company culture. I want to come to something that I was asked in a webinar recently, which was in my company, we've gone from ERG to BRG. So if you don't know, ERG, Employee Resource Group, BRG, Business Resource Group. So there is this thing about, and I know in some organizations you have different terminologies for colleague networks anyway, colleague networks being one of them, employee-led networks being one, employee networks, all kinds, employee communities, colleague communities. I actually do quite like this thing of using the term business rather than employee. I actually think, especially for networks that are in the US, I think it does a lot to counter the political narrative at the moment and some of the legal challenges and the legal risks that employee resource groups are facing in the US as well. So I recently did a LinkedIn Live. So please, if you can, if I can figure out the technicalities of it, I will put a link below, or I'll put a video up there somewhere where you can go and check it out. It's the video I did with two incredible global women's networks chairs, and the one of the women's networks, and it's over 20,000 members globally. The co-chair made a point of saying that there was almost like a conscious choice to rebrand that women's network to a business women's network. And I absolutely loved it, because it really sort of shifted the focus from just being like perceived as women that bring the cupcakes to no, business women, like women that are interested in business. And that's not to say that as a network they don't have a focus which is coming together, supporting each other, etc. But the business became really clear that that network was around business. And so now that network is heavily involved in, client facing events or organizing events where clients are invited in. And I just love it. And a lot of that was from the name. So actually I'm a big fan of the name business inserted into your network, or words like insight or advisory or advice, because I think that sometimes for networks we we forget that there is also this purpose of the network, which is beyond employee engagement. And I know because of the challenges in the US, some networks feel that they almost like have to stick to a very sort of small remit. I'm still of the view that the more you can link to business outcomes, and if you're in a for-profit organization, the more you can link to commercial outcomes, the easier it will be for you to like justify your existence as a network. So actually, you know, now might be the time to rebrand to be a business resource group rather than an employee resource group. Definitely something to think about, especially if you're in the US. I would absolutely lean into it. So how do you come up with the name? I mean, there's all kinds of approaches. I mean, you know, you can even use AI if you want to come up with some options, but you know, having like a brainstorming session with your committee or with some champions of the network. So brainstorming session. This is something that your marketing or comms teams could help you with as well. And then once you've maybe landed a few, maybe 2 or 3, test them out internally, you know, get some feedback from people. And then the final thing is creating some sort of visual identity. But obviously you have to be consistent with the other networks. And hopefully the budget is going to come from comms and or the people team and not from the network, because ERG budgets should not be spent on creating logos and branding. Let me tell you that for sure. So that is it. I hope that was useful. If you have inherited a name, you know, it's been, your network has been called this thing for years and years and years. Maybe it's time to change it, right? Bearing in mind everything that's going on, bearing in mind some of the things that I've said, you know, especially if you're struggling with engagement and you're feeling like your network needs like a relaunch or a reboot or a reset, maybe you need a new name, right? But don't rush it. You know, definitely consult widely, run those brainstorming, make sure that it does the do. Okay, this is a series of 4, right? So in the next one, I'm going to talk about how to get leadership buy-in, especially if it's a new network. So if you're not subscribed, make sure that you're subscribed, share this video with somebody and give it a thumbs up. And let me know in the comments, what's your network called? I'd love to kind of find out some more crazy names for some networks. So let me know. And if you're choosing currently between 2, maybe put that in the comments as well. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye.